here's a live shot of Morehead City, North Carolina, getting hammered by Hurricane Bonnie this morning with wind and rain. And again, you can see a little interference from the satellite transmission because of the nasty weather in Morehead City. We'll have a live report from Jim Cantori coming up in just a moment. Good morning, everyone. From the Weather Channel Forecast Center, I'm Bruce Edwards. Thank you for joining us as we continue our coverage of Hurricane Bonnie, which made landfall yesterday afternoon around Cape Fear, North Carolina, but it really hasn't moved that much since that point of impact. I'm joined by Dr. Steve Lyons, our hurricane expert. Dr. Steve, we've got the latest information from the Hurricane Center, and the most significant feature on the latest update is just a bit of a change in direction of movement.
That's right, a little more northeast as compared to north-northeast, so sort of sliding generally out toward the North Carolina coast, and the track is generally up the eastern seaboard and then accelerating rapidly out to sea. So we need to pay attention in the northeast which way this thing's going because of the storm surge along the coast, the potential for that, and also for heavy rain.
We'll talk more about that in just a couple of moments, but we have a couple of crews stationed down the coast of North Carolina. One is Jeff Morrow in Nags Head, North Carolina, and Jeff will report he's starting to just feel the impacts as they wipe off the lens as the rain continues to pelt down. But in Morehead City, North Carolina, the Weather Channel's Jim Cantori is doing everything he can to stay upright. Jim, good morning. What's the situation?
Bruce, absolutely nothing's changed here from yesterday, except for the fact that the winds have shifted around from the south. 80% of Carteret County is out of power this morning, and there is absolutely no way that any of that is going to get recovered anytime soon as these winds continue. Now, the center of circulation with Bonnie is about 45 miles to my southwest, and that means whatever is left of the eye wall is just hammering away. We are easily 60 to 85 miles an hour here, and there has been a lot more damage in this subdivision that I'm in than what we saw yesterday as a result of the wind shift and even the strength of the wind. You're looking at our mass cam shot now, and that is looking off toward the west, and you can see some of the trees that have snapped off a little bit as a result of the wind. Now, the fact that the barrier island and the sound face east-west means that now with this due south wind that I'm in, the surge has got to be unbelievable. And this is probably where we're going to see worse problems. I wouldn't imagine if we see worse problems today than we did yesterday because of the wind shift and the time of high tide again coming up, and these winds are also going to stay up. So we got some big problems here. We've heard on the barrier island that we have had some houses destroyed. There's been tremendous erosion there. And I can't imagine the erosion that they're going to undergo today. So we got some huge problems here continuing with the wind and these heavy rains easily gusting over hurricane force. Back to you, Bruce.
Okay, Jim. That's some nasty conditions down there around the Morehead City vicinity where Jim is, and he is very near, obviously, the center of circulation. Where we are here at Nags Head, not as bad, but definitely worse than yesterday. Our wind has picked up. We've got a good sustained, probably 25, 30 mile an hour wind down the beach here, sometimes gusting up well over 35. The surf definitely way up, that south swell breaking at least several hundred yards offshore, and it's just a kind of a sky filled with a lot of salt spray, and it's been starting to rain here lightly. We of course expect that rain to pick up as we head on through the course of the day. Yesterday we were seeing breakers out at least 3/4 of a mile out to sea, maybe even a mile, and we're probably going to be getting that again. The ocean is just completely roughed up. Fortunately, right now we're at a time of low tide. That tide's coming in, and Jim was talking about that terrible beach erosion down there near the Atlantic Beach vicinity. Let's hope we don't get that up here on the Outer Banks, but our beaches here face east, which might help us out a bit. Down south at South Hatteras Island and Ocracoke Island, there may be some big problems there. We'll keep you updated here. Let's throw it back to Bruce.
Thanks very much, Jeff Morrow. He looks like he got the better of the two assignments so far. but you may get worse yet before it comes your way. Thank you very much. Jeff Morrow in Nags Head, Jim Cantori reporting live from Morehead City, North Carolina, just getting hammered. Again, joined by Dr. Steve Lyons, and Dr. Lyons, quite an impact on the coast of North Carolina, and it's going to be widespread and widely felt all through eastern parts of the region. We can see some of the impact. Widespread flooding, some roads closed, trees were down, and power outage, of course, a big factor there. We may have 300,000 to 400,000 people without power. And of course, we haven't really gotten the assessment yet from the coast on the wind and wave and flooding damage that could be occurring there.
That's right. You saw Jim Cantori there. I'm glad I'm here, and I'm glad he's pretty stout and tough guy, because the wind is really strong. But those are the types of winds you can expect today, generally in the vicinity of the coast, and especially in the squall lines and thunderstorms, where it's bringing those fast winds above the surface down to the ground. They'll probably be transient in time, that strong, but still, those are hurricane-force winds there. It look pretty nasty.
A very ugly situation. We like to remind the residents of North Carolina still under a hurricane warning that is presently in effect, as it extends from Little River Inlet north to the Virginia border, and then north of that, around the Tidewater and the mouth of the Chesapeake, from Smith Point to Chickateague, hurricane watches are in effect. And then north of those watch and warning areas, we do have heavy surf advisories from Sandy Hook, New Jersey to Merrimack River, and from Earls Inlet, South Carolina, south to Jupiter Inlet, Florida. We still, of course, have a tornado watch in effect over the eastern North Carolina and southeastern Virginia until 5 o'clock this afternoon. No reports of any severe storms yet. But again, this system is cranked up, and you can see some of the heavy bands coming through. And Jim Cantori, I think, is approximately right about here, Morehead City, and so he's getting hammered pretty good by one of those feeder bands coming around the center of the storm.
That's right. You can see these the striations of heavier rain here, and even here. And those things will continue to move off to the east and northeast, and of course the biggest damage or the biggest wind effect should be felt along the coastline there and slightly inland, but that'll bring those strong winds down to the ground.
All right, some heavy rains coming down throughout that region. Now, joining us on the telephone right now is Tom Ditt, who is with the North Carolina Emergency Management. Tom, could you give us an assessment of the situation as you see it so far this morning?
What your guys are seeing right there is what we're getting here in North Carolina, the heavy rain, the high winds. U.S. Highway 17 just south of Washington is closed this morning. A portion of Highway 12 on Ocracoke is underwater as well. We're getting hammered.
Tom, what should the folks know about the emergency services that are available to them in the state of North Carolina this morning?
Requests that have come in overnight have been responded to. People need to stay inside today, stay safe. The big thing that we're very concerned about is that flooding, but we evacuated over 500,000 people, Bruce. We've had no fatalities, just very few minor injuries.
All right, thank you. Tom Ditt, Emergency Management Center from North Carolina. Thank you for that report. The rainfall coming in very heavy squalls from time to time. Radar estimates showing now about 8 to 10 inches, but you pointed out something interesting about those bands of moisture feeding around the center of the storm.
That's right. You can see them offshore here, but you can also see rain increasing as we speak over the land areas as well. The good thing to note is that if you're on the west side, there's not much precip there, and there's probably not going to be. So you're pretty good there. It's all going to be east, over and east of the center.
And then we could talk about, at least 8 inches, or if not more, between now and midnight tonight, and then even more after that.
That's right. It's still only moving about 6 miles per hour. That keeps it over North Carolina before it gets to where Jeff is, approximately 24 hours. That's a long time to keep precipitating.
Again, we want to talk about where is Bonnie going, though? I mean, that's the big question on the minds of those up in Virginia and Maryland, Delaware, New York City.
That's right. It's still really in hurricane forecasting business, creeping to the northeast here, and we expect it to then accelerate off to the northeast. But the critical thing is whether the track is more this way along this edge or more this way. So if it stays on that southern track, the northeast is going to be spared a little bit better. If it stays on that northern track there, they're going to have some storm surge, higher winds, and a much greater potential for high rainfall rates and flooding.
So again, very critical as to where that exact track goes, and we'll continue to watch every wobble and wiggle of that system and keep you updated. Thank you, Dr. Steve Lyons, and thank you for joining us here for an update on Hurricane Bonnie. We'll be doing it all day long, so I hope you'll check back with us often, but if you have to go to the office, check in on the computer. Weather.com will give you the latest information on Bonnie. Now let's go back to the studio, find out what else is going on across the country for the landlubbers. Here's Weather Will Annan.
Thanks a lot, guys. Once again, we're going to talk about some severe weather beginning to break out in the northern plains this morning. Could be more of that heading towards Minneapolis, St. Paul a little bit later on. And there is some heavier rain, too, beginning to work its way east and south of Boston this morning and away from New York City. This is the current weather map.
Before the hour. Thanks for joining us on the Weather Channel. You've tuned in just in time for Storm Watch. A part of Storm Watch, you know, is a tropical update, and we've been dealing with Hurricane Bonnie. Believe it or not, it's still spinning here. The coastal areas of North Carolina here, New Bern here, and I'll tell you what, we've had some very, very heavy rains. Unofficially, up to 15 inches have been reported. Elizabeth City, some locally heavy rain at this hour. Jacksonville, Florida, or Jacksonville, North Carolina, very heavy rain. As you see that spiraling action here, a counterclockwise flow. That's what a hurricane is, a very intense area of low pressure. Now, with many landfalling hurricanes, we have a greater potential for severe weather, including tornadoes. So a tornado watch remains in effect until 5 o'clock this evening for the eastern parts of North Carolina and the southeastern coastal areas of Virginia. Hurricane warnings remain in effect for the North Carolina coast all the way down to Little River Inlet, and we have hurricane watches extending northward to Chincoteague, Virginia, which includes the southern parts here of the Chesapeake Bay area. Heavy surf advisory still in effect, so if you live along the New England coast, we have heavy surf advisories from the Jersey Shore all the way to the Cape Cod area, and heavy surf advisories farther south from the center of circulation, which includes the east coast of Florida all the way to Jupiter Inlet. Now, here is the latest on Hurricane Bonnie. It's centered, if you're plotting with us, you will notice that it has already moved inland. It is now 15 miles south of New Bern, North Carolina. Winds of 85 miles an hour. It's moving northeast at 6 miles an hour. And the lowest pressure, 970 millibars. Where is Bonnie going? Well, we don't know for sure, but the forecast pretty much takes it along the coast here of New England. Now, we don't know how close to the coast it will stay. If it stays close to the coast, of course, we're talking about heavy rain and storms along the coast as we go through the next 24 to 48 hours. But it is very well possible that the center of the storm could move out far enough to see that we will not have as much as a direct impact along the New England coast from Hurricane Bonnie. But we'll keep you posted, of course, hour by hour, the latest information from the National Hurricane Center. Now, this is Bonnie, but we have Hurricane Danielle right on its heels. I wouldn't say right on its heels. It's a pretty good ways away, but it's definitely churning up the waters that were just already bothered by Hurricane Bonnie. Now, Hurricane Danielle is centered at 20.8 degrees north, 57.7 degrees west. It's over 390 miles east to northeast of the northern Leeward Islands, winds of 90 miles an hour, and it's moving west northwest, a forward momentum of 20 miles an hour, and there you see the lowest pressure, 997 millibars. Now it looks as though the average trajectory of this hurricane is a little farther away from the Bahama Islands than Hurricane Bonnie was, but that's not to say that this system may move onshore the east coast farther north than North Carolina. That does not mean that, because this system could very well take a due west turn, but we will keep you posted as we go through the day-to-day and the next several days.
Hurricane Bonnie pounds the Carolina coast, bringing damaging winds and flooding. How far up the east coast will Bonnie leave its mark? A live update next on Weather Center.
This program was sponsored by the Home Depot.
As a customer, you're so important to us that you should have the best price all the time, rather than just sometimes when other stores think it's convenient for you.
Home Depot doesn't have sales because we have an everyday low price.
The competitors have to have the sales because they jack their prices up so high, but we keep our prices low every day.
You would be out of your mind if you shop someplace else.
You're being hammered by torrential rains and near hurricane-strength winds in Morehead City, North Carolina this morning as Hurricane Bonnie continues to cause havoc in the area. Morehead City has been under the gun since yesterday, and the going will remain rough there for some time to come. We'll have an on-location live report coming up in just a moment or two. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us here at the Weather Channel. I'm Bruce Edwards. We continue our coverage of Hurricane Bonnie, which came ashore about 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon. And it's still on shore and hasn't moved all that far from where it made landfall about 18 hours ago. There's the latest, well, actually not the latest information. We have just received some information. We don't have it graphically positioned for you yet on Hurricane Bonnie. But again, you can see it's situated just south of New Bern, North Carolina. It was moving northeast at 6, but now the maximum winds have been downgraded to 75 miles per hour. That is a minimal hurricane with the latest advisory, and we'll have that graphically depicted for you in just a few moments. But it is moving to the northeast at 6 miles per hour. But Bonnie has had and will continue to have an impact on the Carolinas. In South Carolina, for example, again, quite an impact reported there. In South Carolina, for example, tens of thousands of homes were without power. Thousands of folks were in the shelters. Trees were knocked down, roads blocked, and more than 125,000 people have evacuated the area. But Governor David Beasley this morning has lifted the evacuation order for those in Horry County, and that includes the Myrtle Beach vicinity, as some folks they're allowed to go back to their homes and their communities, although the spokesman for the governor says that sections of the Grand Strand may be off limits until later on this afternoon. He notes Cherry Grove section of the beach was especially hard hit by the storm. North Carolina has also been, again, hard hit, even more so by the storm system. That's where it made landfall near Cape Fear, North Carolina. There's widespread flooding, roads closed, trees down, power outages, again, for hundreds of thousands of people in North Carolina. Wind, wave, and flooding damage to homes along the coastal sections, and still many people are in shelters, and if they're not, they should stay right where they're at because it is pretty rough out there. And we've got a couple of live reports to testify to the intensity of Hurricane Bonnie, even though it is weakening. The Weather Channel's Jim Cantori is located in Morehead City, North Carolina, and the Weather Channel's Jeff Morrow is in Nags Head, a little farther up the coast, but it's really around Morehead City that you're seeing the most significant impact on the storms. And here with a report, live, Jim Cantori.
Hey, Bruce. I've kind of moved behind our live truck here a little bit, so I'm getting some protection from the wind. And I'm going to show you in just a moment what it's like to actually be out in the direct hit. You know, it's hard. Try to prove it to me that this thing's weakened a little bit. It's hard to, because now winds are right off the Sound and right off the Atlantic where I'm at. I'm facing south, so we're actually getting stronger winds as a result of less friction. I mean, there's no friction with the winds coming right off the water. So they're much stronger here today. Plus the eye is only 40 miles off to my south and west. But as you mentioned, a lot of power outages, a lot of reports of localized flooding. Here in Carteret County, we've got as much as 80% of the county without power. And we are hearing from the beaches on the barrier island that there's a tremendous amount of erosion, so not good news. Let me take you out here. I'm going to walk out beyond the truck and show you what it's like. Again, winds are about 60 occasionally 74 miles an hour, and it's very, very hard to stand out here because this wind is coming right off the sound. And you can see from our storm cam the effects that we have on the trees here as a result of this very, very strong wind. We've had several trees that we've seen down, and obviously power lines are a big problem here. Oh, nice to be back in this position. Other than that, we're just going to kind of deal with this storm as it continues to slowly move on off to the northeast, and we're definitely looking for those winds to die down, as are the residents of eastern North Carolina. Well, upstate, not bad yesterday, but today, all this is coming your way. Let's find out how they're doing in Nags Head. Jeff Morrow has a live report. Jeff?
I think we'd rather not have it come our way, Jim, but conditions here have deteriorated throughout the morning hours. I think I'm starting to get here what you had very early yesterday. We have to keep wiping our camera lens because we're getting a lot of rain driving up out of the south here. We have a pretty good southerly wind flow right now. Taking a look at the surf, which is hard even to see from the beach here because there's so much spray and rain and salt in the air. It's very hazy out there, so the visibility isn't all that great. But as we pan back over here, we can see that the ocean really isn't too high up on the beach yet, but we're coming up to a high tide probably around the noon hour, and that's when we might see some more beach erosion along the coast here. But the rain has started, obviously, blowing more sideways than anything, and we expect it again to pick up and be worse as we head on through the course of the day. We'll keep you updated here from the Outer Banks of North Carolina. I'm Jeff Morrow. Let's go back to you, Bruce.
Thanks very much, Jeff Moore, reporting live from Nags Head, and before him, Jim Cantori getting buffeted about in Morehead City, North Carolina, with a live report. I'd like to introduce Dr. Steve Lyons, our hurricane expert right now here in the Forecast Center. And Dr. Lyons, we've got the latest advisory now in on the hurricane, and there are the statistics as we see them.
That's right. It's continuing to move to the northeast at about 6 miles per hour, and the Hurricane Center's lowered the winds a little bit. Of course, Jim is now experiencing the worst winds he's seen so far, but he's very close to the maximum wind area over land. The strongest winds are still offshore, just off the coast, and that's going to continue to cause a lot of beach erosion, and that high surf there is still pounding the area.
That's right. All of North Carolina is still under a hurricane warning from Little River Inlet to the Virginia border. North of that, from Smith Point to Chickateague, a hurricane watch is in effect. North of that, then, from Smith Point, you take it up to Cape Henlopen. We have tropical storm warnings and tropical storm watches north of Cape Henlopen up to Sandy Hook, New Jersey. And then you continue up the coast from Sandy Hook up to Merrimack River, where you have heavy surf advisories in effect. And even though you work your way south, even though the hurricane is past, still heavy surf advisories from Murrells Inlet, which is just south of Myrtle Beach, down to Jupiter Inlet. And there's always a threat with one of these systems is the potential for tornadoes, or so a tornado watch is in effect, including southeastern Virginia until 5 o'clock Eastern time. Dr. Lyons, here's a look at our radar, and again, we can see still some intense bands of rain buffeting the coast.
That's right. The circulation center, of course, is over here, and we actually had a calm wind there just to the southeast of Jacksonville a little while ago. The direction of motion seems to be generally this way the last few hours. The overall direction of motion the Hurricane Center is forecasting is more up the coast. That will make a big difference on the impact of the northeast, so you need to stay tuned to the Weather Channel to see what direction this actually goes. And of course, these heavy rain bands coming in here are the ones that are producing strong winds, and even inland in these showers, you better watch out. Stay put inside. That's a safe place to be.
What we're saying locally, 8 inches or more of rains. Again, some locally heavier amounts are indeed quite possible because you get heavy rain and a slow-moving system, and that's a nasty combination.
That's right, and we're very lucky in this case because the rain is not as heavy as it could be. It's moving slowly, and we're going to get a lot of rain, but the rain rates are not as high as they normally are.
And of course, we're most concerned about the potential track of Bonnie. And again, depending upon that path, it is very critical for residents along the northeastern seaboard.
That's right. The National Hurricane Center's track is generally up this way, which is probably a safe bet so that everybody is aware of the potential damage up there. But the range of tracks could be this way, and if it comes out on the southern track over here, this side, we're much better off in the northeast, but you need to stay tuned because that's not the official forecast yet.
That's right. It's still a long way to go, and we'll still have to wait and see exactly how Bonnie decides to react and head on out. Thank you, Dr. Lyons.
You're welcome.
And thank you for joining us here for this updated edition on Hurricane Bonnie. And reminder, all throughout the course of the day, whether you're away from your TV set or not, you can check us out on the website at weather.com for the latest information. And don't forget, coming up at 10 before the hour, a complete tropical update, and we'll also take a look at our other hurricane in the Atlantic. That's Danielle. Where is that headed? We'll check it out for you in a few minutes. Right now, back to the studio for the rest of the nation's weather.
Well, of course, Hurricane Bonnie is the big weather story for today. But besides Bonnie, we have some other weather headaches, too, around the country. And one of those happens to be across the nation's midsection. We're tracking a very strong low-pressure system that continues to get better organized across the Midwest. And so far this morning, it has been spreading a swath of showers and storms across North and South Dakota on into Omaha and Dubuque, Iowa. And the showers and thunderstorms milling around the nation's midsection this morning will be slipping towards the east. So although the morning rush hour, not too bad for those of you in Minneapolis, you'll likely be seeing some thunderstorms a little bit later on today, and especially by tonight, maybe some thunderstorms too, hammering those of you around Chicago. Now, aside from that, we've had some sloppy weather conditions too over parts of the Northeast. We're watching a slow-moving frontal system easing its way towards the east, and at least earlier this morning, it brought some rains from Philly up towards Cape Cod. Most of the rain has tapered off a little bit, but still with this front very slow to move, there will be a chance for a few more showers or thunderstorms redeveloping later this afternoon. And with more details about that, let's check out the forecast with Marnie.
Well, of course, again, we're watching that storm as it continues to move up through the North Carolina coast with high winds and heavy rain.